Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Poor Richard's Cafe and Star Local Media. Poor Richard's Cafe, Plano's oldest restaurant since 1973. They are open daily from 5:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., serving the three most important meals of the day: breakfast, lunch, and dessert. It is true Texas home-style cooking made with love and grit. That is Poor Richard's Cafe, located off of Avenue K in Plano. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor at Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Brian Murphy and Justin Thomas. Gentlemen, let's talk not exactly the Academy Awards per se, but let's reprise a fun little game that we had right around this time last year and do our, I guess, the second annual basketball Oscars. We're recording this on Monday, so granted there's still the girls' state tournament. We've got the boys' third round and beyond still to play, but it feels like the field has been, thinned out enough to where we can feel like we've got all the evidence that we need to, to hand out some unofficial basketball Oscars to some of the standout teams and players from the 2018-19 season. So, in kind of keeping with the same format from this time last year. The big three awards, Best Picture, Best Lead Actor, Best Lead Actress. We're going to go and just discuss who our selections are for those awards from our respective markets. We'll have the three of us go around and give our picks, then we'll bring on Taylor Ragland, Kendrick Johnson, Devin Hassan to round things out with their selections. And let's get right into it. Let's go. Let's start with Best Lead Actor. And Justin, I know you were just thinking about this one, so it's fresh on your mind. So what is your from the Denton County area, from your all the markets that you cover, who is your pick for Best Lead Actor?
Well, there was 3 or 4 candidates I was wrestling with, but I have settled on Coppell senior point guard Tariq Aman. He's a 4-year starter, 4-year varsity player. I gave some consideration to Bryce Oakpo at the Colony over there. Louisville's Keontae George just had an outstanding freshman season, scoring over 20 points a game. Hebron's Logan McLaughlin was just a big-time playmaker, whether it be, shooting in transition. He really made that team run. But I'm going to go with the 4-year captain of the district champion Coppell Cowboys as my choice. Real strong defensive player. The couple times I was out there seeing them in practice, you can see his leadership capabilities and qualities. Even when the varsity was done practicing and the JV or the freshmen would be warming up, you could hear Tariq out there, barking at the younger guys, instructing, stuff like that. And then on the court, he was a big-time scorer for them this year. His kind of game has evolved and changed throughout his 4 years on the varsity team. And this year, he was more of a playmaker and a scorer for them. I believe he led the team in scoring, or was tied for the team lead in scoring in every district game but 1 or 2. So he was very consistent, big shots, big free throws to win some close games that they pulled out in district on their way to the title. So, like I said, 4-year player, captain, so just did it all for them. So I'm picking Tariq Aman as my best actor.
Brian, how about you?
There's a lot of good players in the Frisco, Salina area. Carson Stastny, one of the top scorers, the Salina forward, he's a junior. He averages over 22 points per game up there for the Bobcats, led them to an undefeated district title. He was definitely a candidate. Zion Richardson for Frisco Liberty, definitely a candidate. He dropped 40 in the season finale against Heritage. One of the best basketball players, no doubt about it, in the entire area. Julian Larry at Lone Star, he's not just a quarterback, he's a stud point guard for the Rangers as well, led them to a district title, a share of the district title with Liberty, so he deserves some recognition, but none of those guys are a 5-star recruit. None of those guys are probably going to go to either Kansas, Kentucky, or Duke, like R.J. Hampton is.
Are you ruling off TCU?
Or Memphis. He could go to Memphis too. That's his final 5. But he has to go to R.J. Hampton. It's a no-brainer. He averages 32 points per game, a walking triple-double. He struggled against Timberview in the first half. He had 5 points in the first half of that game. He was 1 for 9. And then I was like, man, this isn't R.J. Hampton. Did the Monstars take his talents in this one? What's going on? And then the second half, he scores 24 alone in the second half. So he was just fine. This is all while facing double teams, triple teams.
Which is routine for him.
Oh, yeah, boxing ones. They always have a guy. Timberview had a guy almost on, I'd say, half of the possessions, bringing the ball up the floor. It'd be Brandon Croftley bringing up the ball up the floor. and they would have a player literally shadowing, following RJ all the way down the court when he didn't even have the ball. You know, when you're facing, you know, defenses like that, defensive schemes like that, and you're still dropping over 30 a game, you know, it's a no-brainer, slam dunk. RJ Hampton, best actor.
Yeah. I went with Allen's Isaiah Stevens for my pick for this, and it was one that you know, if you had asked me at any point in the year what my decision would have been for this, it was probably going to be Isaiah Stevens. Just I mean, you have the storyline of him coming into the season, you know, fresh off, you know, helping Allen to a state championship last year, but him being the only returning starter from that team, having to shepherd along a team with has a ton of talent, ton of promise, as evidenced by the season that they just had. But lots of young guys on that team. A lot of guys getting their first really serious varsity minutes, and you know, with him and senior Corey Jones really being the only two players with any substantial varsity experience, having to kind of lead them along and help mold this Allen team into the program that had its best regular season in its history. And you look at just and I did a feature story on Isaiah Stevens early on in district when he was, because from late December and early January he was just on an absolute scoring tear. I mean, he was racking up. He was in the 30s. He had 42 against Jesuit. Just some unbelievable offense from him. Went and did a feature on him, and I mean, you just get a sense of what he's just one of those types that is a natural born leader in that respect, and you can see why. I mean, head coach Joe McCullough, who's in his first year as Allen's head coach, said as much afterwards that when you're taking over a program that loses so much like Allen did last year, you're not really entirely sure what to expect heading into the season. But Stevens' leadership really helped put McCullough at ease, and just how much he kind of set the tone for everything that Allen was able to do this season. And then you see things like how he, him taking on a much more prominent role with him, not having to share the ball as much with Allen, because Allen last year was just such a balanced team, and Stevens, everything kind of ran through Stevens to an extent for large chunks of this season, and just getting to see his growth as a playmaker, and then having to be more of a natural point guard on top of already being, at least in my general opinion, just the best shooter in the Metroplex. I mean, yeah, you're not going to find too many kids that can just get on a scoring tear from the outside, from the inside. I mean, just as impressive a shooter as I've seen in my years covering high school sports. Unfortunately for Allen, their season didn't end the way that they had envisioned. They got bounced in the second round on Friday by Kailyn Shoemaker, but obviously still a year to remember from Isaiah Stevens. And yeah, that's my pick for best lead actor. Let's circle right around to best lead actress. Brian, let's start with you this time. Who was your pick for best lead actress, i.e. the best girls basketball player in your coverage area?
I'm in the same boat in this one, because you have players like Randy Thompson, Adriana Quezada, girls that are going to big time D1 schools, and girls all across Frisco and whatnot, but it's got to go to Jordan Oliver. I mean, she's the top ranked player, women's player in Texas, 5-star recruit, going to Baylor, led Prosper to a really deep playoff run, a very successful season in their first year in 6A. It's another slam dunk. It's equivalent of RJ Hampton. Jordan Oliver, she's competed with the U.S. Women's team, the under-16 team before in the summer. How do you not give it to a girl like that? It's almost too easy for these selections so far with Hampton and Jordan Oliver.
Yeah, of all the players on Friday, because I was covering that game against Allen, and of all the players, I mean, you feel for her with just all that she's given to that program over the years, and just as close as Prosper was, and I mean, she certainly went out on her shield. She had 21 points in that game, and yeah, I mean, she was, as you'd expect, just trying to will that team back in when Allen was making its big push. But yeah, I mean, how could you argue with that selection?
And think about before the season started, they weren't getting any recognition. We were all picking them to maybe not even make the playoffs, just like we were picking Prosper not to make the playoffs in almost every other sport. And here they go, make this deep run, and they just can't get by Allen. They had a 15-point lead in the second half. And last year in the third round of the playoffs, they lost to that Lone Star team that had Quezada, had Mallory Adams, and now I was at that game. It was a nail biter. You got to feel for Jordan Oliver with these so close, but yet so far in these really tight playoff losses.
Justin, where did you lean for best lead actress?
This was a pretty easy one for me as well. You mentioned Isaiah Stevens being the best kind of shooter that you've covered here in a while. Well, there's no doubt who the best girls basketball shooter that I've covered is. Just talking shooting, it's Jewel Spear. She's awesome. She's going to be named the 858 MVP, which when I saw the voting, by the way, just a side note, I saw the voting for this, and I couldn't believe how tight it was between her and the Denton girl, Kylie Scott. seemed like it should have been a runaway for me. But anyway, so she will be named the 858 MVP. And just an awesome season. Scored over 23 points a game. As I said on Monday's podcast, 25 points, at least 25 points in all 4 playoff games. Just every time I saw the Colony play, I probably saw them play maybe 5 or 6 times. Like, she just does something incredible, like every time. Whether it's just like an actual like 20-point quarter barrage, where she'll just put up 15, 20 points in a quarter and just make everything, you know, step back threes, crossover threes, off screens, behind the back passes, alley oops to Tamia Jones. Like, she just had an outstanding season, and pretty easy pick for me, I think.
For mine, it was, this one required a little bit more.
She also got 20,000 points in that loss to Amarillo, or 2,000.
2,000. What a career.
2,000 points already as a junior in that Amarillo game.
How many points did you have to average over a 4-year varsity career to reach 20,000?
Yeah.
Mine required a bit more deliberation, just because when you're picking a girls player from Plano, where you had from a district that had 3 McDonald's All-Americans.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you have, including 2 between, with Plano, S.J. Nowens, Allen's, Nia Green, and you had Tavi Diggs over at East, the reigning district MVP. Ultimately, though, I settled on Jordan Merritt with Plano Senior, who, Jordan Merritt, just a junior, but obviously, having to anchor along, her and Zaria Collins having to anchor along a Plano team that, much like the Ellen boys, lost a ton of senior leadership last year after winning a state championship. And, you really began to see last year Merritt begin to take strides as being the go-to option for this Plano team. But, like I said, with all that Plano lost last year, it was natural to expect that the offense was going to look a lot different. That, as far as her creating offense and getting offense, from other players, it was going to be a much different year for her overall, and she handled it about as well as anyone could have anticipated. I mean, her post game was just absolutely devastating. Like I said, time and time again, just her drop step and just a shot over the left shoulder. I mean, is as much of a money shot as there was of any player that I saw this season. She could stretch the floor, and then just her length is just makes her an absolute nightmare on defense inside. Plus, she's also a very willing passer as well. She really does, very, very, very well-rounded player. She eclipsed the 1,500 point mark this year as only a junior. And I mean, you look at kind of just her trajectory. I mean, she's at a point now where, I mean, she's going to be in the conversation as a McDonald's All-American, potentially next season, and she's got a chance to go down as one of the just pound for pound best basketball players to ever pass through Plano ISD. And you look at, I mean, that lineage alone, I mean, that is no small feat. But yeah, she's already got a state title under her belt. She's not sure, again, I'm not sure she'll edge out Jordan Oliver for the district MVP, but nevertheless, I mean, a player that is, every bit an MVP candidate based on her season. And yeah, and my pick for best lead actress. Great season for Jordan Merritt and the Plano Lady Wildcats. And let's round out with our selections for best picture, i.e. best team. I can start with this one because my selection is a no-brainer. We're recording this on Monday, moments after we finish recording Monday's podcast, where we're talking about having an Allen team that is bound for state for the very first time. And I mean, I'm just thinking of, we're talking, this is based on, themed around movies, and I mean, what a movie Allen's season has been at times this season. With, this is a team that I've seen them. I don't know the exact number of times, but I've been there in person for 3 losses of theirs. I want to say their record is 32 or 33-6 heading into the state semifinals. I was there to cover half of those losses, and all of them were by double digits. I mean, they've had times this year where it just looks like it just wasn't going to click for them, despite all that talent, all that potential. But then over the second half of district play and on through the postseason to this point, they've everything has come together for them, and they've become this team that at the start of the year you were hearing rumblings that watch out for Allen. This could be the best team that Allen's had ever, and just to see it all kind of come through, it's very, very Plano-esque, in which a team where everything has kind of fallen into place, a team that really is playing its best basketball at this point of the season, and we'll see what is in store this week out in San Antonio. And then just you couple that with just the theatrics of some of the games that they've had, and there's whether it was the buzzer beater win against Saxe, and them getting into an absolute just a straight up shootout with the number 2 team in the state. Pflugerville Hendrickson and them just making this improbable rally in the second half to edge Prosper. I mean, just some real storybook elements to how Allen has built its has paved its road to its first ever state tournament berth. And to that you credit players like Niagarino, I mentioned earlier, McDonald's All-American, one of the best offensive players in the country. Tyler Jackson, who has just been absolutely lights out over the last 3-4 weeks. Sidney Adams, the unsung hero of Allen's playoff run. Zoe McCrary, who's just getting offensive boards and putbacks like it's nobody's business. Such an impressive team, and every bit deserving of a state semifinal appearance. And yes, a no-brainer pick for my best picture nod. How about you, Justin?
I'm going to go with the Colony Girls, District 8-5A champions. Only lost one game in district, and then get back to the regional tournament and take the number 2 team and eventual regional champion right down to the buzzer. They were potential foul call away from shooting go-ahead free throws to play for the regional championship. So, some other good candidates. Coppell boys winning the district. You had Hebron girls going from last to third and making the playoffs. Louisville boys going from last to second. You have the Colony boys still playing right now. They have their third round game coming up, or happened on Tuesday. But I'm going to pick the Colony girls for getting back to the regional tournament and giving Amarillo all they could handle.
Let's round on that with your selection for best picture, Brian.
If Little Elm would have beaten Timberview, they'd probably be my best team. After knocking off the number 3 team in the state like that. But to piggyback off yours, when you have a team going to state, that's another no-brainer, slam dunk. Frisco Liberty, they're my best team selection. We could have, if Lone Star would have won, if Randy Thompson misses that shot, I'd probably be saying I would be saying Lone Star girls would be my best team. So literally that game right there decided this accolade.
There was so much more riding on that than just a trip to state.
Trip to state, no. You needed this Star Local Media Best Picture from yours truly. That's why Randy Thompson made the shot. That team, they've been together on varsity. 6 of those girls have been on the varsity since freshman year. They're built for this. This is destined for this season. 17-1 in district play. Their only loss coming in overtime to Lone Star. This team they played the best competition in non-district play to prepare for this. Mansfield Timberview, Plano West, Amarillo, Lincoln, Prosper, Allen, Wiley, Irving MacArthur, DeSoto. They played all of those teams in non-district, and they had a losing record going into district play. But they weren't concerned. They knew they were playing the best 6A teams in the state. And it paid off. They steamrolled through district. They beat Lone Star twice, and here they are, heading to state, and the best team in my market.
I still can't process 17 district
games,
wins.
I'm still trying to get over that.
Massive district. And let's see. That is a look at at least our selections for the basketball Oscars. We will pick it up with the other half of the staff. We will bring on Taylor, Kendrick, and Devin to give their selections, and we will do that after a word from this sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
All right, I'm here with Frisco Liberty point guard Kailyn Lay. Kailyn, y'all have a big week coming up. A couple days from now, y'all are going to be playing in the state tournament. Y'all leave tomorrow morning. What's kind of going through your head? How excited are you to be going to state?
I'm super excited. We're just really focusing on not just the trip, but getting things done so we could stay there and.
What are y'all doing this week? Anything in practice? Anything different? Y'all doing going through any different motions, or doing kind of the same thing that kind of got y'all here? Yeah,
we're sticking with the same stuff, just scouting our team and focusing on them.
All right, so I have to ask. So going into that game Saturday against Frisco Lone Star, third time y'all played them this year, how nervous were you and how nervous was the team?
I'd say we weren't really nervous. I mean, we probably were a little, but we were more let's get this done and beat them so we could move on to the state.
Now, okay, the shot by Randy Thompson that sent it to overtime. I've seen a bunch of pictures. I've seen the video a million times of it. Everyone's going crazy. What was going through your head when you saw that shot hit the bottom of the net?
I was as soon as I turned around, I saw her shoot the ball. I was this ball is better. It's most likely going in. I was and I saw it go through the net. I was extremely excited. I was like, I can't believe she just made this.
What was the huddle like going in between the overtime, between the fourth quarter and going into overtime? What did y'all say? What do you even say? What do you even think in that moment when you're like, okay, we have to get ready to play more basketball?
I was just trying to calm everybody down from like, you know, all the jumping and stuff we did from the shot. But I was like, we need to like finish this and get it done now.
What did your head coach, Ross Reedy, say to y'all in that moment? Do you even remember? Do you remember? Or just pandemonium?
I don't remember. It was just a lot going on.
Now that moment when the clock hit zeros and you actually had 2 really clutch free throws to kind of put the game away, or at least put it a little bit out of reach. What were you thinking when you're at the free throw line? You were only up 2 at that point. You made both of them to go by 4. Is that correct?
Yes, okay. I think so.
What was kind of going through your head when you're sitting there at the free throw line, knowing that, hey, make these, we're going to state?
I was just thinking, like, we practice these all the time in practice. Just put them in and finish the game.
Now, what's the scouting report on this team that y'all play on Thursday? I know they're top 5, another top school in the state, another top program. What's kind of the scouting report on them that you've seen?
Really focus on like defense because they're guard heavy. So just make sure we're communicating on defense and getting the little things done right.
Now, your freshman year, y'all made it to state, and y'all made it to the state final game. What did you kind of learn from that experience? I don't know how much you played or what you saw or the experience you gained, but just being there, seeing that, how much did experience and insight did that give you and some of the other seniors that were part of this program? Even if y'all didn't play a whole lot back then, but knowing that y'all have been to state before, how's that helped y'all heading into this weekend? I
think it's helped us a lot because we know what the trip's going to be like and how like things should be done when we get there, and we're kind of like used to the atmosphere kind of now. So
now, what's it going to take, and what would it mean, to win your first ever state title for this program?
It would mean a lot. Like, we just have to stay focused and determined to get things done and work together.
And let's pick this back up with the second half of our basketball Oscars. For this half, we've swapped in Devin Hassan and Kendrick Johnson. Taylor Regner had to step out for a bit, so I will take the reins on that. Give y'all his selections for the basketball Oscars, our second annual basketball Oscars. So as a quick refresher for you guys, it's the big 3 awards from the Academy Awards. So Best Picture, i.e. Best Team, and then Best Lead Actor and Best Lead Actress, the best boys and girls basketball players from your coverage areas from this past season. So let's start on the girls' side of the hard court. Let's talk some Best Lead Actress, and Devin, let's get the ball rolling with you. Whether it was Mesquite, Garland ISD, Saxe Rowlett, who was the top girls basketball player in your coverage area?
Like I say, a lot of good candidates. Tajani Perry, Amaya Briggs over at Poteet, leading them to the district title. Nia Boyd and Jasmine Shavers over at Horn, leading them to a share of the district title. Gazi Openeke, their outstanding all-around forward over at Rowlett. Again, with Saxe, you can make a case for any number of players. That's the direction I'm headed, and my choice would be Avery Krause. She's signed with UTEP, just a good all-around player. Led them in scoring. Again, this is a team that had 5 players that kind of scored between 8 and 14 points. So there's other capable scorers on that team. But a good rebounder, good defender, just does everything well. And was the leader of that team. She was a district most valuable player last year. She was the co-MVP along with Ngazi Openeke over at Rowlett this season. And again, doesn't have those kind of eye-popping numbers, but she does have that potential. If their team was structured differently, and if they ask more of her, she's capable of scoring 20-25 points a night. It's just that wasn't asked of her. But yeah, a lot of good candidates, but yeah, my lead goes to Avery Krause.
Kendrick, how about you? Who was the top girls basketball player in McKinney ISD? Your pick for Best Lead Actress.
I went back and forth between Erin Fry and Zoe Jackson, and I give that nudge to Erin because she had more explosive games. She had a couple 30-point games, and she averaged 18 points during district and almost got the Lionettes back to the playoffs. And there's a simple fact, she went from being, as Shaquille O'Neal likes to say, other to being the one. She had a culture shock this year from her role, and she did good in it. I think it took her a little bit longer than what many expected for her to get used to it, but when she did, she definitely is that lady, and I expect big things for her in the future, but I give her the edge. Erin Fry is the top Lioness and female basketball player in McKinney for 2019.
Without a doubt, I mean, there are a few players in the Metroplex who had to endure a bigger change in their role than Erin Fry from last season to this, and she handled it just fine.
And you saw when she shows up the difference versus when she does it.
Let's see. Taylor's pick for Best Lead Actress was Plano East's very own Tabby Diggs. Tabby Diggs, the reigning District 6-6A MVP. And, you know, per Taylor, I mean, the case for Tabby Diggs is kind of similar to the one that I laid out, you know, earlier on for Isaiah Stevens over at Allen. In that, you know, with Tabby Diggs, you know what she brings to the table. She is a 4-year varsity starter, you know, one of the best careers of any girls basketball player to pass through Plano East, without question.
Saw it twice, very solid.
And but with you know, with this season though, it's like her role and what she had to do was a little bit different, just because she didn't have as much experience surrounding her as she had in years past. A lot of Plano East production came from underclassmen as far as the supporting cast went. So with Tabby, a lot was put on her shoulders as far as shepherding along that group of young players and acclimating them to the varsity spotlight in a district that is, I mean, you have 3 McDonald's All-Americans in this district and teams that, I mean, any number of those 7 teams could have made the playoffs in any other district. And
like McKinney, boy, they were last. I think they almost probably 90% of the districts in the state, they make the playoffs. They just was in the wrong one.
And but you had Tabby, you know, helping lead Plano East to a playoff spot, you know, once again. And then in doing so, I mean, we all know what she can do on the court. I mean, she's one of the most versatile players in the Metroplex. You know, she can score inside. She's got a jump shot. She's, you know, for her size, she handles the ball so well in transition. Can run a fast break very well. Yeah, I mean, just an absolute.
You got to steal.
Yeah, an absolute blessing for Plano East these past 4 years to have a player like Tabby Diggs at the forefront of their program. Like I said, one of the best girls basketball players to pass through Plano East. And yeah, Taylor's pick for Best Lead Actress. So then let's shift gears and talk Best Lead Actor, the best boys basketball player in these gentlemen's coverage areas. Kendrick, where did you lean on this one?
Went with Byron Scobie, who's one of the top 2 scorers in the area, maybe in the state. This man had 2 50-point games, 4 games over 40, and averaged 33.2 for the season. He can flat out light it up. When you can miss 5 shots in a row and then hit 7 shots in a row, like you have no conscience, you're on a whole nother level. And I don't know if Matt got to see him get hot. Did you see him get hot though?
I didn't see him get hot. I think he had 18 in the game that I saw against Allen in their last game. And I remember talking to Coach Watson after that game, because, you know, that was the game that, you know, officially knocked McKinney out of the playoffs. And I think of all of the guys on that team that it hurt, you know, head coach Wes Watson for most, it was Byron Scobie, because of how much he's put into that program over the years.
He went from a guy that could get hot, like a couple games last year, like I saw him like do what he did this year, but it'd be like he have 28 and then he have 7. So it was like, what happened? The guy definitely worked on his game. He was very consistent this year, to the point where he was the focal point. You had people triangling and wanting him and stuff all year. And the only team I saw effectively guard him was Allen. The first time he had a bad shooting game, but everybody else, he gave them the business.
Devin, how about you? Who was your pick for Best Lead Actor?
This was tough. I mean, because again, I don't have a guy that's, you know, pouring in 32 a night. And you look at the success of even some of the playoff teams, the Saxe and Poteet. They had that committee approach where they have a bunch of guys. They could have 6, 7 different guys capable of leading, being the leading scorer that night. You did have some guys that kind of took the lead role. You know, you look at a Jerry Caraway over at North Mesquite, Chuck Ogu at Rowlett, Zakir Sawyer at Horn. But again, it was they still had several different guys that kind of contributed to the scoring. So my choice, probably because every time I saw him in person, he was just lights out this year, is Cody LeBlanc, senior at Mesquite High School. Averages about 18 a game, but is one of those guys that's just capable of filling it up. And, you know, we talk about the kind of Steph Curry effect, not comparing anybody to Steph Curry, but the way that kids kind of emulate the stars of today.
Yeah. Boy, do they ever.
And Cody LeBlanc's a good example of that, because he brings the ball up, but he'll stop 4, 5, 6 feet beyond the three-point line and just start. But he's got that same quick release, and he's a streak shooter. And like I say, when I saw him play against North Mesquite, it was probably the best shooting performance I saw all year. Hit 7 threes, actually hit 9 because twice he just shot him after they blew the whistle. He would just shoot anyway, and I mean he was just nothing but net all night long. Just a phenomenal performance, and again, probably the most dynamic scorer that I have of any of my schools in the area. So Cody LeBlanc gets my vote.
Taylor's pick for this one was Plano West Ryan Zambi. Ryan Zambi, who we all knew coming into the season, if you follow Plano West boys basketball, he was one of the best scorers in the Metroplex last year. Averaged 23 a game. His numbers actually this year from a raw volume standpoint are down. He only averaged about 17 this season. But as a result, though, I mean, it was almost like for the better of West, because last year it really was like if Zambi had an off game like that, there just wasn't really much of a plan B, because Dalen Miner was hurt for chunks of last season, and but this year with Zambi, with the downtick in scoring, though, you got a much more well-rounded, much more efficient game out of Ryan Zambi. You saw increases in both his field goal percentage and his three-point percentage, plus an increase in his assists and whatnot, so more of a playmaking aspect of his. And but you saw the effect that it had on this West team. I mean, he was still the go-to scorer every night. I mean, he's an absolute just monster in transition in the job that he does, on runouts, finishing on fast breaks and whatnot, on top of being able to attack the basket at will and finishing from the outside. Just such a dynamic offensive player. And yeah, you saw just the effect that it had on this West team. Plus, Dalen Miner as well was very strong in that, and Taylor did want to make sure that Dalen Miner got a bit of a nod, as well as those two were a very nice 1A, 1B for this Plano West team that really did follow through on the experience that it had back for this season, and was able to advance 2 rounds deep in the playoffs and came within a hairline of taking down a top 10 team in the state. So another strong year on the hard court for Plano West, and in no small part thanks to another great offensive season for Ryan Zambi. And with that, let's round this out and take a look at the selections for Best Picture. The best team.
Easy for me.
All right, who was the best team in your neck of the
still
woods?
Playing the North Bulldogs on a 14-game win streak. They've been to the regional quarterfinal round for the second time in 3 years, and they're just a team that just knows how to compete and win. You got Brandon Frazier, one of the best tight ends in the nation, leading them, putting up 18-10, and you got guys that just know their role, like Nick Partey, senior guy. Don't want to see his career end. They proved that the other night. They were in a dogfight with Carlton Newman-Smith, found a way to get the game to overtime and won. They're going to be a tough out. I'm looking forward to see them and Lone Star hook up. But when you win your district undefeated and you on a 14-game win streak, it's kind of easy. Yeah,
the case writes itself. Yeah. Devin, how about you? Who's your pick for Best Picture?
I had some good storylines this season. The Saxe boys, after winning just 2 games all of last year, they win 18. They make the playoffs, set a school record for victories in a season. The Poteet girls winning their first district championship since 2005. Poteet boys winning their first playoff game since 2004. Mesquite boys getting back, but I got to go with the Saxe girls. State ranked all year, coming off that state tournament appearance last season. That was the goal this year. They roll through district play, 4 straight district champions. They've won 55 straight district games, and we're this close. They're going to be wondering what could have been all season long after that last second victory, or last second loss to Allen. They trailed for much of that game. They come back, they take the lead with I guess just a few seconds left, but that was just a few seconds too many as Allen gets the putback at the buzzer. And they kind of look ahead and they see Allen now in the state tournament. And they say, wow, Allen beat a Hendrickson team that Saxe beat last year in the finals to make it to state, and then they played a Prosper team who Saxe had also beaten this season. So obviously Coach Donna McCullough will be the first to tell you this is the most talented, the best Saxe team she's had. They're certainly going to miss seniors Avery Krause and Kayla Demas. But, the future is also bright. They returned 3 of those starters with Jayla Brooks, Adhel Tack, Tia Harvey. Elizabeth Woods was a key 6th man. So, this was a tough ending for Saxe. Obviously a great season, enough for me to give them my best team award. But, they could be in the same position next year.
Let's see, to round this out, Taylor's pick for Best Picture, whereas always, I espouse the greatness of the Allen girls, the aforementioned Allen girls that are now on their way to state. Taylor went the other side of the hard court of Allen and picked the Allen boys basketball team as his nod for best picture. Allen, despite graduating 4 starters from a state championship team, Allen still had a better regular season. Still had the best.
I think they had more talent on this year's team from somebody that's neutral and saw them last year and this year. This team had more talent, but usually they always win. That's how it works out. The team that not necessarily the most talented, but that gets like the hottest at the right time is the team that wins the title. I think that's what happened to them because I think this team had more talent.
It was definitely a different team from last year from a stylistic standpoint as far as what their strengths and weaknesses were. A team that was much more athletic, maybe didn't have the overall size of last year's team, which wasn't a big team last year anyways, but it was more guys that were like 6'5" and 6'6" versus
this year that can go up over your head like they did in McKinney.
Oh yeah, if you trust me, the best part of getting to watch an Allen game beforehand may very well have been before the game during layup lines when those guys are putting on an absolute dunk contest.
I saw it at McKinney.
And there's like 6'7" that are just throwing down some just unbelievable dunks. Such a fun team to watch, and just the job that they did. I mean, it was their same old, they can get up and down and run on you with the best of them. And there was plenty of viral highlights from guys like Manny Obaseki and some of the stuff that he did.
He tried to go N1 mix against McKinney. My man tried to bounce the ball from the free throw line over Andrew Pitts to Thailand, and if he gets over his head, he's all up on the rim.
Thailand Elder will punch down and will punch a big one on you. I mean, you had Obaseki, I think it was against Boyd. I saw the highlight where he went between his legs on a fast break dunk. I mean, just unreal stuff for only a high school sophomore. Yeah. And you got Isaiah Stevens, who I said earlier, I mean, one of the best shooters in the Metroplex, the best shooter in my opinion, just as dynamic a scorer as you'll find. And it was such a solid team to watch. I mean, they only, like I said, their record entering the playoffs was 32-3, and they only lost. I mean, those 3 losses came to 2 teams. Number 2 ranked Guyer and number 4 Jesuit. I mean, only losing to the best of the best. Obviously Allen's season ending a bit earlier than they had envisioned. Getting upset in the second round by Kailyn Shoemaker. But that's what happens when you play other really good teams in the playoffs. Shoemaker, state-ranked team, just like Allen, and sometimes those things will happen. But nevertheless, still a strong season for Allen under first-year head coach Joe McCullough, and they'll be just fine next season. But another solid campaign on the hard court for the Allen Eagles, and that will do it for this edition of the podcast. So yes, appreciate you guys for tagging along for this, as well as Brian and Justin. Hey folks, you enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to y'all later.